The medal nobody else has. Imagine the most prestigious U.S. military decoration, the Medal of Honor. More than 3,500 soldiers have received it since the Civil War. But only one woman has ever worn it, and she refused to take it off even when the government tried to strip it away. Her name was Dr. Mary Edwards Walker, and her story is as extraordinary as it is complicated. A tale of war, courage, defiance, controversy, and an enduring fight against the chains of expectation. Childhood in rebellion, 1832 to 1850s. Mary was born on November 26, 1832, in Oswego, New York, into a large family of 6 children. But this wasn't a typical 19th century household. Her parents, Alva and Vesta Walker, were outspoken freethinkers who rejected rigid dogma, challenged religious orthodoxy, and ran a farm where equality wasn't just preached, it was practiced. The Walkers banned corsets and tight dresses, insisting their daughters wear bloomer pants that allowed movement and health. They also opened Oswego's first free school, making education available beyond the wealthy elite. From the start, Mary breathed an atmosphere of rebellion. Girls could think, act, and learn just like boys. By her teenage years, she was devouring medical texts her father kept at home. At a time when most women were expected to become wives and mothers, Mary's ambition was already extraordinary. She wanted to be a doctor. A Woman in Medicine, 1855. In 1855, Mary achieved what almost no woman in America had managed. She graduated from Syracuse Medical College with a medical degree. She was the only woman in her class, and one of just a handful nationwide to hold that distinction. But the achievement was bittersweet. Society wasn't ready to accept women physicians. Many male patients refused her care, colleagues dismissed her as a novelty. The prejudice followed her even into her marriage to fellow Dr. Albert Miller. The two opened a joint practice, but business suffered. Most patients refused to be treated by a female physician. Their marriage strained under this professional failure, and eventually ended in divorce. Mary's determination, however, never wavered. She knew medicine was her calling. She just needed the right battlefield, literally. The Civil War begins, 1861. When the Civil War broke out, Mary saw her chance. Thousands of men were about to be injured in ways the world had never seen. She believed she could save lives. But the army didn't agree. When she applied as a surgeon, officials rejected her application outright, because she was a woman. Instead, she was told she could work as a nurse, the only role considered acceptable for women. Mary accepted, but not for long. At makeshift hospitals in Washington, D.C., she dressed wounds, amputated limbs, and performed surgeries beyond her official status. Slowly, commanders began to recognize her skill. Her persistence eventually carried her onto the battlefield itself. On the front lines, Mary served in field hospitals during some of the most brutal campaigns of the war. Fredericksburg, Chattanooga, and numerous smaller skirmishes where medicine often meant the difference between life and death. Conditions were horrifying. Hospitals stank of blood and rot. Surgeons worked without sterilization, sawing through bone as quickly as possible because anesthesia was scarce. Infection killed more soldiers than bullets. Mary not only endured these scenes, she excelled in them. Soldiers remembered her moving from cot to cot, unshaken by the carnage. Unlike many surgeons, she often treated both Union and Confederate wounded, believing medical duty knew no uniform. Her refusal to conform extended beyond medicine. She wore modified Union officers' trousers and a short jacket, declaring long skirts unsafe and unsanitary for a battlefield surgeon. "I don't wear men's clothes," she once said. "I wear my own clothes." Capture and imprisonment, 1864. In 1864, while crossing enemy lines in Tennessee to aid civilians, Mary was captured by Confederate soldiers. Accused of being a spy, though her only crime was carrying medical instruments, she was sent to the notorious Castle Thunder prison in Richmond, Virginia. Conditions were brutal: overcrowding, disease, starvation, and humiliation. Guards mocked her for her clothing and treated her with suspicion. Mary, true to character, refused to wear the dresses given to her in prison. Even in confinement, she insisted on her identity, spending months behind bars until finally exchanged in a prisoner swap after 4 months of captivity. The Medal of Honor, 1865. Her courage did not go unnoticed. In 1865, President Andrew Johnson signed the order awarding her the Medal of Honor. The citation praised her valuable service to the government and her patriotic zeal. This made Mary Edwards Walker the first, and still the only, woman in U.S. history to receive the decoration. She wore it every day for the rest of her life, often pinned to her black suit jacket. But her recognition came with complications. In 1917, during a government review of Medal of Honor recipients, her name was struck from the official roll because she had not been a commissioned officer and had technically been a civilian contractor. Mary refused to surrender the medal. "You can have it over my dead body," she declared, and she kept wearing it until her death in 1919. It wasn't until 1977, long after her passing, that President Jimmy Carter's administration officially restored her medal. The rebel reformer after the war, Mary turned her energy to new battles: dress reform and women's rights. She believed tight corsets, heavy skirts, and layers of petticoats were not only impractical but also a health hazard. She was repeatedly arrested in public for wearing trousers and jackets, yet she laughed at the charges, insisting she was guilty of nothing more than common sense. She also fought for women's suffrage, testifying before Congress in 1912 and 1914, and publishing essays such as Hit, Essays on Women's Rights. But even within the suffrage movement, she was sometimes marginalized. Her insistence on individuality, her eccentric clothes, her bluntness, made her a controversial figure among activists who wanted to appear respectable. Still, Mary never compromised her independence. She remained defiant until the very end. Death and legacy, 1919–present. Mary died on February 21, 1919, in her hometown of Oswego. She was buried in her black suit, Medal of Honor pinned proudly to her chest. For decades, her name faded into near obscurity, remembered mostly in niche histories of women's rights. But recognition grew slowly. 1982 Right-Pointing Arrow. The U.S. Postal Service issued a commemorative stamp. 2000 Right-Pointing Arrow. She was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame. 2012 Right-Pointing Arrow. A statue of her was erected in Oswego. 2023 Right-Pointing Arrow. Fort A.P. Hill in Virginia was renamed Fort Walker, the first U.S. Army base named solely for a woman. 2025 Right-Pointing Arrow. In a controversial move, the Army renamed the base again, erasing her name in favor of honoring 3 male Union soldiers. Why she still matters. Mary Edwards Walker was more than a doctor, more than a reformer, more than a medal recipient. She was a living challenge to every expectation placed on women in the 19th century. She dressed how she wanted. She worked where she wasn't allowed. She wore the Medal of Honor when they tried to take it away. Her life forces us to ask, what does it mean to truly live by your convictions? She remains a singular figure in American history, not because she was perfect, but because she was unrelenting. A rebel in a surgeon's coat. Thanks for watching. Please consider subscribing to the channel and see you soon.